Hi everyone, I am Kimbyrleigha and this is Kimbyrleigha Live. If it's your first time here, it's nice to finally meet you. And if you've never met me before, I do have a true crime channel here on YouTube. I'm linking that below in the description box. We're almost at 500,000 subscribers there. So thank you so very much for that. I also have a video podcast with my husband called Dark Livity. Those are solved true crime narratives. So if you're into that kind of thing, check it out below. But I am here today to recap a current case that is going on, and that's what I'm doing on this channel. And today I'm recapping day one of the Raul Valle case. This is the murder of James Thomas Jimmy McGrath. So if you haven't watched my recap and the summary of that case, you may want to do that before jumping in today, but maybe not. I'm sure you can follow along because we're going to learn a lot today. I'm new to this case. It's different because we just got done with Karen Reed, so it is a totally different type of feeling. You have to kind of get out of that mindset, get into this other case. And just so you know, I am going to be doing some live streams about Karen Reed coming up next week because there's been so many interviews and I would like to discuss them with all of you. So all of you that are coming off of the Karen Reed trial, don't worry, there will be more. But I also want to point out something for this trial. I found out yesterday that in Connecticut, they do not do opening statements. So on the very first day of trial, they jump right into the state's case and their first witness. So I didn't want you to think that I was holding anything back by not actually showing you opening statements. That didn't happen. And by the way, if you are on the replay, let me know below where you're coming from, how you found this channel, and let's jump in. Okay, so today on day one of the trial, attorney Mark Durso, that is for the state, and Kevin Smith is Raul's defense attorney. So just so you know who they are. By the way, there are also some other characters, also other players on the defense and on the state, but I haven't really gotten to know them yet. I'm sure we will as this goes on, but it's only going to be a 2-week trial. And by the way, just so you know, Raul, he was already getting tired. He was already getting tired of the judge. You know, I can't blame him because I was falling asleep listening to judge, but I'm not on trial for murder. But I wanted to play you this just to kind of start everything. Are you ready? And then we'll jump into everything else. Here we go. By the way, if there are any problems with my audio, let me know now before we jump in. And then secondly, I don't control the volume in the courtroom. So it goes up, it goes down. Someone's not standing at the podium. That's not me. I'm doing my best. If I go to turn them up too high, it's going to blast your eardrums. So there'll be fluctuations. Okay, so here we go. Let's look at the big yawn coming from the defendant in the blue suit. That is Raul Valle.
It is the responsibility of counsel to object to evidence which he or she believes is not.
I wonder if he noticed it. I wonder if he was like, oh, you know, because look, I can't blame him. You know, I would probably fall asleep too. Is that what I said? But I think it's important for the defendant to make sure they're being respectful at all times. But it's a human thing. We yawn. Okay, so I get it. I just, wanted to point that out. And hello to everyone that's in the chat. I see you. I'm going to be putting your comments up on the screen as we go along. I know this is a new case. Like I said, it's kind of hard to switch gears, but the first witness is former Shelton officer. Remember, this happened in the Shelton area of Connecticut, and that is Lonnie Blackwell. We heard his name before in our last stream if you were here, and he was the first to respond that night. And recall, he described the scene as chaos triage, and that's because there were so many bloody victims. Now, he's no longer working with Shelton PD. He's with Homeland Security, and he confirmed all of his credentials. He describes his prior police training at Milford Academy. He reports that at approximately 11:53 p.m., he was dispatched to 43 Laurel Glen Drive. There was a report of multiple stabbing victims. He estimated there were at least 30 juveniles at the scene, and the environment was chaotic. He was flagged down by a small group of girls that were, pointing to people that were injured, and it was dark out there. However, it was lit due to house lights, cell phone flashlights. We're going to get to more of that because a lot of people were filming this. Day 2 is intense. Day 1, you kind of have to get over that hump of setting the scene, figuring out what's going on. There was also the officer's own flashlight. We're going to listen to him explain what he observed that night. And also, apparently, The defendant, Raul, he goes by the nickname Lido or Lido. I don't know if it's Lido or Lido. I think it might be Lido. But if you hear people calling him a different name, that is who they're referring to. So let's jump in.
Mr. Blackwell, I'm showing you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 1 as a full exhibit. Can you tell us?
He's not at the podium. So look at the closed captions. I'm going to move them to the top. If you need some help with what the state is saying right now, this is the attorney for the prosecution.
Tell ladies and gentlemen of the jury where you responded to in State's Exhibit 1.
Yep. So when I initially was going to the call, I turned on to Adams Drive here, and I drove up to the intersection of Laurel Glen and Adams. When I approached Laurel Glen, I could see from my cruiser that there was a large group of juveniles. At the time, I approximated maybe 30 juveniles right in front of the yard of 43 Laurel Glen. And I was flagged down at the corner of Adams and Laurel by a small group of female juveniles who waved me down and started pointing me towards the direction of where the incident occurred. So I exited my cruiser at the time and began jogging over to the front yard of 43 Laurel Glen.
And just for the benefit of the record, is 43 Laurel Glen located where that red mark is on top of, in the middle of States 1?
Yes.
And when you got to the scene, what was the scene like?
It was chaotic. As you can imagine, a large group of juveniles, pandemonium. I would describe it as that. That's best.
Around what time did you arrive there?
Right around midnight.
And what were the lighting conditions out that night?
It was dark, but I could clearly see, probably due to the mix of lights on the house as well as a ton of the juveniles had phones out, lights from the phones, as well as my own flashlight, but everything I could see pretty clearly.
I want to show you State's Exhibit 2 that's marked as a full exhibit.
By the way, this camera person is not, he might get he or she might get the hang of it maybe going forward, but oh my goodness, you're going to be looking at this weird paneled wall here and there.
Can you see that?
Yes.
Again, is this 43 Laurel Glen where you arrived at 12 a.m. on the 15th of May of 22?
Yes.
We saw this picture yesterday or whenever I went live. The days are running together, but here is what the lawn looked like. This is after they deemed it a crime scene. You can see everything scattered. He is arriving, and of course, when he got there, there was no crime scene tape, but this is what the lawn looked like.
And is this States 2 kind of show the area, what it was like, absent the individuals on the front lawn?
Yes.
And when you got to 43 Laurel Glen on the 15th, midnight on the 15th, where did you respond? Can you tell us where you responded to in States 2?
Yes. So when I walked up on foot, I responded to this specific area of the grass area to the right of the house if you're looking at the front of the residence. And that's where a large majority of the juveniles were located, as well as the 4 victims that I later identified.
I'm going to show you States 5. This is a daylight picture that was taken, obviously, at 43 Laurel Glen.
Yes.
Okay. And the area that you responded, you see this debris area here pointing to the middle section of the grassy area where it looks like there's some clothing items located just to the right of the basketball hoop, just below the red bush area here. Is that the area that you responded to?
Yes.
Okay. And when you responded there, tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what you encountered at that point in time.
Yep. So a few of the juveniles pointed me to the victims. So at first, within this area on the grass to the left, I identified 2 victims. One victim had a wound to his arm. He was responsive. He was standing. He was talking. Another victim was sitting upright on the grass, and I witnessed what appeared to be a stab wound to his torso area. He was still responsive at the time. Then I moved on to the right side of the grass area, where then I identified another victim with multiple stab wounds to his leg. At that time, I saw he was bleeding a lot out of the leg, and I applied a tourniquet to his left thigh area as high as I could. And then after applying that tourniquet, I moved on to the last victim that I identified as having a wound to his chest area and began providing medical attention as I could.
With regards to the third individual that you applied a tourniquet, can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury why you did that?
Yes. So for my training in the police academy, for our medical training, we're taught if you have a wound and are bleeding a lot from an appendage and you're able to place a tourniquet, that can assist in stopping the bleeding. So that's why I placed it as high as I could on his left leg, where most of the wounds I saw were. to assist in stopping the bleeding.
And based on your training experience, based on what you saw the wounds to be like, what gave you that impression that the tourniquet was appropriate at that point in time?
First of all, because they were on an appendage, and I witnessed a large amount of blood being lost from the wounds. So I was able to apply the tourniquet due to it being on the leg.
So it took 10 minutes for EMS to arrive, and there were 4 injured victims. One had an arm wound, one had a stab wound to the torso, and another multiple stab wounds to the leg. Officer Blackwell then applied pressure tourniquet to the leg of the 3rd victim, who was bleeding heavily, and this was because he was trained to do so. Now, the 4th victim had a chest wound near the heart, and he was already blue in the face. There were other people coming out with rags and t-shirts. They were trying to apply pressure. That was some of the other teens that were there. And another officer came and assisted until EMS took over. So then he talked about how the scene was managed, how the other officers came onto the scene. Their duties were to secure the scene at this point, to clear the house, to see if there were any active suspects there, to figure out what was going on, to interview people, to take photographs, and also to confirm the layout of where the victims were found. Remember in Karen Reed's trial, there was just, where was he? Where was he laying? This was done very differently, and you're going to see some of those differences as we go along. But there were victims found near the basketball hoop and between the basketball hoop and that red bush that you are going to see over and over again that I showed you yesterday. There were neighbors helping at this point. Like I said, EMS got there, they took over, and of course, the crowd was interviewed. Now, these were informal interviews, so let's hear about that, because a lot of questions from last night were being asked, and I think some of those are going to be answered. People were asking, what about the parents? Whose house is this? What's going on? And by the way, I'm laughing about the greasy, it was Converse. I think she said, I'm so glad for the greasy Converse. And I was like, okay, or Converse or something. Greasy coverage. I love it. Great coverage. But yes, here we go. Here is the rest of that.
The large amount of juveniles that were there, so then we can begin interviews.
And did you, in fact, begin interviews at the scene?
Yes, I did conduct a few interviews.
And the information that you received from those individuals, did you pass that information on to anybody?
Yes, it was all passed along to the Detective Bureau.
And did the Detective Bureau, based on your observations, respond to 43 Laurel Glen that night?
Yes.
And who responded to that scene at that time?
Detective Bango responded, as well as Lieutenant Kozlowski.
And at that point in time, in May 15th of 2022, did you have body-worn camera?
No,
Why not?
they were not issued to us yet.
Okay. And at some
No body-worn camera. And now we know it's Detective Bango. I didn't know how it was Banjo. It's Bango.
point in time later on in that year, was body-worn camera a requirement of all police departments?
Yes,
Was it a requirement of the Shelton Police Department on or about July 1?
yes.
So do you know whether or not the Shelton Police Department, in fact, had a body camera at that point in time?
I believe they had one body camera issued.
And do you know what, if anything, that body camera was used for in relation to any investigation?
I believe it was used to record some of the interviews.
And do you know, in fact, whether or not that body camera was used in this case?
I believe so.
Now, how long would you say that you were on scene at 43 Laurel Glen conducting your witness interviews and securing the scene for?
Approximately three or 4 hours.
And at some point in time, did you leave the scene?
Yes, I went back to the headquarters to type my report.
And based on your witness interviews at 43 Laurel Glen, not telling us what they said, but were you able to identify or develop a suspect that you were looking for from those interviews?
Yes, we were able to develop a group of suspects that fled in a vehicle from the scene.
And were you able to develop and identify a vehicle that they were seen fleeing?
Yes, I believe it was identified as a Honda SUV.
And was that information passed along to the Detective Bureau as well?
Yes.
So at this point, they are interviewing multiple teenagers. They pass their information to the Detective Bureau, and based on those interviews, the police identified a group of suspects who fled in a Honda SUV. So Shelton PD had no body cameras, as we heard. They had one available, and it was used to record some of the interviews. Now, I haven't gotten to that point in the trial yet. I'm only on day 2. There has only been 2 days, as far as I can see. So we are kind of on track here. Now, Attorney Smith is for the defense. he's going to come, he's going to go over the basics. First, he confirms if Blackwell is employed with Department of Homeland Security, how long. He's doing some formal training right now. And Blackwell admits the visibility when he got there wasn't that great, but he had the vehicle lights, he had flashlights. But now here comes a question that's going to come up again and again. And remember in Karen Reed case, we talked about how the defense is going to have their theory, the state is going to have their theory, and they're going to keep reiterating something for the jury to keep hearing. For the defense in Karen Reed's case, it was Proctor. Proctor touched this, he did that, he was involved in this. So for the state or the Commonwealth in Karen's case, they talked more about, why can't I talk today? Did the defense coerce you? Did they tell you what to say? That was kind of their theory, right? Or things that they focused on. Here, it's going to keep coming up again and again, and that is drinking. Now, because we don't have opening statements, we're kind of being detectives here. We're trying to figure out, what is the theory of the defense? What are they saying happened here? But I can tell you, alcohol is going to be a topic that the defense brings up again and again.
When you got there, did you notice that there were any signs of drinking?
Initially, no. When I initially got no.
When you say initially, no, at some point, though, you did come to see that there were signs of drinking having gone on at that location, correct?
Yes, later on in the night.
And what signs of drinking did you encounter?
I believe there was alcohol bottles found.
Was that inside the house, outside the house?
I can't recall.
Red Solo cups, kegs, bottles of liquor? What are we talking about?
I can't
There's red Solo cups again.
recall exactly.
All of that, perhaps?
Possibly.
Objection as to possibly. I mean,
Overruled.
Were there any signs of any adults on scene?
Initially, no, but some adults did respond.
So when you initially arrived, do you think there were maybe 30 people there in the yard?
My best guess was about 30.
All juveniles?
Yes.
And do you think it's possible that there were in fact more than the 30 that you saw? Were others in the house?
objection.
Okay, so right here, the officer is observing signs of drinking, including bottles and possibly red Solo cups, but he couldn't recall the exact items. He also estimated there were at least 30 juveniles outside. Were there more people inside? The state objected to that, so that they didn't go into that. And there were no adults present. Somebody asked about that last night. They said, where were the adults? Well, some were called to the scene at some point, and I talked about that. Wow. I guess I wasn't expecting no parents to be at the scene inside the house. I thought maybe it was one of those scenarios where the parents say, I'd rather you drink here. But no, this actually looks like more of a, hey, my parents are not here. They're out of town or something. Let's party. Now, I don't know that for sure, but we know that there were no adults supervising. And it seems as though the defense is trying to emphasize just how many people were there. That's going to go over and over again. He's going to say, how many people do you think were there? I was assuming this was to show that Raul felt threatened by the crowd. We're going to get to that. Let's keep going.
You told us that you began doing some interviews after you'd secured the scene, correct?
Correct.
What was the time that you started those interviews, do you think?
Approximately 12:45.
So about 45 minutes after you arrived on scene, you think?
Approximately.
And you told us that you spoke to, I believe, 3 different people on scene?
Possibly more, correct? Yeah, around.
You only took interviews or statements from 3 of those, is that correct?
Yes.
But you may have spoken to more?
Yes.
You told us you came to learn some information that you passed along to the Detective Bureau, correct?
Correct.
And that was information regarding possible suspects, correct?
Correct.
And information regarding the vehicle that some folks claimed they were in, correct?
Correct.
Did you learn at any point of the existence of any video or recordings that people have made?
No, I was not aware.
Did you learn that any of the people that you had spoken to had been involved in fighting or attacking either Mr. Valle or any of the other folks that were there?
I learned there was a fight.
Of course, he learned there was a fight. He began interviews around 12:45 a.m. and took statements from 3 people. He spoke to more, but he took written statements from 3. We learned that he found out there was a fight that night. And now there's going to be yet another question that this defense attorney will ask every witness so far. And that is whether each of them, no matter what they saw, if they know why the defendant did what he did that night. You're going to hear this over and over again, and it's a good question. So let's listen.
Officer Blackwell, fair to say you've been called here today to tell us about what you witnessed when you arrived on the scene, right?
Yes.
And you've done that to the best of your ability.
Yes.
But if what these jurors want to know is why Mr. Valle did what he did that night, you can't really be of any help to them at all, can you?
No.
He can't. He can't explain why he did what he did, which again will become more important because the defense is slowly building their case. Chaos, a drunken night, no parents, teens, many of them, so many of them. The defendant might have felt threatened. You'll see how he builds and builds on this repetition. That's important. Remember, we saw it in Karen Reed's case. But now for the state's second witness. This is Michael Egan, I think it's pronounced. He is an EMT. Sorry, his eyes are closed. When I pause this, I don't always look at where I'm pausing it, so I apologize. But he's the second witness, and he's going to go over his education. I don't ever play that part unless it's all important. But what I mean is I'm going to say what his background is so you know a roundabout idea. Now, if for there's a reason why I need to go into detail, I will always play that for you. But he went over the difference between EMTs and paramedics. He explained EMTs provide basic life support, while paramedics perform advanced life-saving measures, life support, including, I think he said, cardiac monitoring, medications that can be given to a patient, and EMTs use automated external, oh my gosh, I'm gonna mess this up, defibrillators, AEDs, let's just call them AEDs, that decide when to shock, and paramedics use life packs, and they make that decision themselves. And I don't know why I can't talk today. But his ambulance arrived around 12:01 a.m. on May 15th of 2022. Minutes after they were dispatched, they were on the scene. It was chaotic. There was a distressed crowd, according to him, and police were already on site. They parked at the house across the street so they didn't want to park right there because they wanted other vehicles to be able to get to the house. So I want you to listen to what he saw that night and what the victims were like.
You got there, can you describe to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what the scene was like?
Sure. So when we arrived, the police were obviously there. I think there was
Yes.
maybe 1 or 2 units. I can't remember specifically. And there was a large group of people on the front lawn. We pulled just past the residence to leave room for additional ambulances because at that point we had been told there was multiple patients. We got out of the ambulance. We were encountered with a very large crowd. It was rather chaotic. People were screaming and yelling. We knew there was, possibly four patients at that time, so we started our triage. We came across the first patient. In this picture, if you kind of see, there's a cluster of, looks like kind of garbage. That's right around where we found the first patient.
I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 5.
Sure.
This is a daylight picture sent to the same area.
He kind of talks fast, so hang on. He talks fast.
Yes.
Can you use State's 5 to kind of describe what you did?
Yeah, so there's that red tree right there just in
Okay. Camera person, if you happen to, for whatever reason, watch this, because not a lot of people are live streaming this. If you watch this, bless your heart, but can you please show the big screen, not somebody's computer screen? This ain't it.
front and to the right of that red tree. We found our first patient. He was laying supine
We can't see the red tree because one of the attorney's heads is in the way.
on his back.
Oh my goodness.
He was completely unresponsive. His breathing was spontaneous but erratic, which is not a good sign. We immediately checked for in times like that for triage, we immediately checked for a pulse, which he had a very weak 30 pulse, which is another bad sign. And he did not look well. You look at someone that's very sick and determine they don't look well. So we do a rapid trauma scan, which is we check for any major bleeding.
He was talking a mile a minute. And you know what's funny? It's not, when I say funny, I don't mean haha, I just mean interesting, but I keep saying interesting and y'all are like, you need an interesting emoji because I say it so much. He's talking so fast at one point, he confuses himself and it was adorable. Oh, sorry. Hold on. I clicked the wrong button. Oh, here we go.
So we did that. I remember his shorts were absolutely saturated in blood, and we found a puncture wound to his upper left abdomen, kind of his left lower chest area. So when we come across a wound like that where there's suspected trauma, you apply what's called a chest seal, In the event that there is a punctured lung, it can help stop that lung from collapsing any further. So we applied that chest seal. At that point, we didn't see another major bleeding, so my partner broke off and continued to triage the rest of the patients. And when I went to reassess that patient that was laying there, we noted that he had stopped breathing at that point. I reassessed the pulse, and he had no pulse.
So
How sad is this? Like, I know we're talking and we're not taking it all in sometimes, but these are young patients, victims that are found laying there on the ground. One of them's not breathing. They were barely breathing, and they had a weak pulse. This is Jimmy. They had a weak pulse, and then finally he felt no pulse.
you mentioned triage. What is triage? Can you just explain?
Yeah,
that?
of course. So triage is when you get onto a scene and you're overwhelmed by patients for the amount of resources you have immediately available. You have to determine who is in the worst shape and who could benefit most from the help. So if you come across someone that is in cardiac arrest and deceased and you have 4 other patients, you're not stopping to help that patient. Unfortunately, you're moving on to someone who can still be helped. Because if you stop to help that person, their odds are very slim. Now, someone else who had another chance to survive, their odds are going down because you're spending time on this person who really.
That's a really good point, and I'm glad he brought that up because it gives us a picture of these chaotic kind of scenes. They need to think on their feet. That's how they're trained. Look at the situation. Who needs the most help? Because if you're I don't want to say wasting time, but if somebody has a tiny cut on their hand, somebody else has a life-threatening emergency situation going on, you don't want to stop and help the person that has a less severe injury. You want to move on and triage that situation. That was a really good point.
Really has no shot.
Okay. So on the night in question, when you got there, is it safe to say, based on what you've told us so far, when you got there, you attended to the first patient that you saw?
We did, yep.
And that patient, based on your assessment, was still breathing and had a pulse?
Yeah, it was a very weak 30 pulse, and his respirations are very, very erratic, but they were spontaneous, so he was still breathing technically. Yes.
And when you applied the chest seal, I think you said, what if anything, did that do for the patient?
In this case, I don't believe it did much because when we went to reassess him right after that, he was in cardiac arrest. So I don't think it did anything.
It's so incredible to me how this situation got so violent so quickly. And we don't know what the situation was like, but I peeked ahead because I am on day 2. What you will see, and I will show the videos, I don't think YouTube will take it down because I've seen Law and Crime, I think, had day 1, not day 2, but I think Court TV had day 2. The news is showing it, so I think we'll be okay showing it, but I think it's really important because it just shows you how this escalated so quickly. And these are young people, so they have phones. So there are recordings of this fight.
So when he went into cardiac arrest, what, if anything, did you do next?
So when someone goes into cardiac arrest, we immediately apply the AED. The AED will analyze a rhythm. While we're setting up the AED, we'll start CPR. But in a witness arrest, you want to get the AED on as quick as possible. The witness arrest meaning he went into cardiac arrest right in front of us. Because
witness arrest, he's not talking about somebody getting arrested. I was a little bit confused when he first said that. It's when somebody is witnessing someone go into cardiac arrest. And that's important because that's how they're going to triage everything and determine that he needs to be transported.
As odds are he's probably in a rhythm that can be shocked. So we started CPR. I had 2 bystanders there. One said she was a nurse. One said he was a neighbor that was trained in CPR. Because at this point, my partner was triaging the rest of the patients. So I directed them to start CPR. We applied the AED. You step back and the AED analyzes. It told us that there was no shock advised. And then we retrieved the BVM, which is a bag valve mask. It's called bagging. We applied it to him and we began delivering respirations and CPR in 2-minute cycles.
Now,
That's a really good question. Lenova, let me know if I'm saying it wrong. I'm curious if the 2 boys knew each other personally or if they were just in acquaintances. That has not come up yet. We are going to be hearing from a lot of people that were there. Like I said, took a peek. Lots of young people going to be taking the stand, which I think is incredible. They have done a great job. They're so well spoken. So, I mean, these are now college age students. Some of them are, I think, like 20, somewhere around that age. So we're going to get there probably in day 2. I do not know the relation other than they were rivals when it comes to sports. I don't know if Raul played sports, but I know that as far as Jimmy is concerned, he was a lacrosse player and a very good one.
No, when it was no shock advised, what does that mean?
So the AED will analyze a number of heart rhythms, but there's only 2 rhythms that you can shock: ventricular tachycardia and ventricular fibrillation. And the AED will only deliver a defibrillation. Fibrillation. I meant to say fibrillation. Atrial fibrillation and ventricular tachycardia. Sorry.
Here he got so tripped up on his own words. I was like, oh, it's okay. I know this is a very scary situation to be on the stand and all these people looking at you and know it's televised. I get it. He handled it really well. He's like, he took a pause.
Ventricular tachycardia and sorry, I'm drawing a blank. VFib, ventricular fibrillation. Sorry.
I was like, you got this. You got this.
Those are the only 2 rhythms that can have a defibrillation delivered to them. So the AED won't deliver a shock to anything else besides that. So when it says no shock advised, it means it wasn't in one of those rhythms. I can't tell you what rhythm it was. It doesn't tell you what it was. It just means it wasn't one of those.
Okay. So when you applied the AED, you received that information. What, if anything, what steps did you take to continue to render aid to that individual?
Sure. So we insert an OPA.
I'm not going to go into this right now because it's going to come up again. This was Jimmy that was found lying on his back, barely breathing, with a weak pulse and a blood-soaked pair of shorts. I know you're not seeing the shirt and the shorts and all this, and it's going to get even more complicated because this is a very big group of people, and they are going to be showing some photos later. We're going to get there. I promise it's all going to make sense, but I was kind of like eager to keep going at some point. And I'm like, I don't know whose shirt that is. I don't know whose pants they are. But they found a puncture wound that was on his upper left abdomen / his lower chest area. And they applied a chest seal so that they could so they could potentially treat a collapsed lung if that's what was happening there. Other than that, they didn't notice any other major bleeding happening. And this whole time, when the attorneys refer to Jimmy, they are going to refer to him as James Thomas McGrath. But of course, that's his legal name, but he went by Jimmy. So he had stopped breathing and his pulse was lost. The seal was applied, but it didn't do anything. The AED was applied. CPR was initiated with the help of 2 people that were standing nearby. One claimed to be a nurse. That was somebody that either came from the neighborhood. We haven't really established who that is. Maybe they'll be interviewed. But this is the scene that was happening. And this machine analyzed the rhythm and advised no shock. So they ended up doing I think it's like a oral airway using a valve and a mask to ventilate. And they did compressions and the list goes on. He talked about why the rhythms were not shockable. That was important. They couldn't do it, and they explained why, because of course they're going to be challenged on their methods. So now for cross-examination, this is Attorney Smith again, and he's going to point out some of the profanity that was coming from the crowd. Again, remember, he's trying to paint the picture in the defendant's perspective, and he's going to emphasize anything that was going on that could have been threatening.
That you arrived on scene and it was chaotic, correct?
Yes.
In fact, you said people were screaming, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Yelling obscenities, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, yelling obscenities at you and your crew member, Ms.
Yep.
Kaiser, correct?
Yeah, it happens frequently.
You said that the crowd was difficult to part to get to the patients.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, however, you did get to the patients.
We
correct?
did.
And you said one of the patients was standing and able to talk.
I didn't write that in there. I believe Sophia might have written a addendum after she went and triaged, but I did not encounter any standing patients.
You didn't encounter any standing patients. You encountered one person who was laying down on the grass, correct?
Yes.
And then you rendered some aid to the person that you indicated or believed was the most in need of your care. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, he was the first one he came across. So we do a rapid scan. And then, after we did the rapid scan, applied that chest seal, my partner moved on to assess the rest of them. And then I began working doing the AED CPR.
Any indication that these yelling, screaming folks had been drinking?
I did not witness any alcohol, so I can't comment on that.
So there you go. This was an emotionally intense situation. He asked about alcohol again, right?
Did you feel threatened at all?
I didn't feel threatened, no. I didn't feel the obscenities were being yelled like at us in a violent method. It was more like, hurry the blank up, he's blanking dying, things like that.
Okay.
Oh my goodness. Think about that situation. He's blanking dying. Hurry the blank up. I mean, fill in the blank. I think most of us would be in the same mindset.
Yet they were still difficult to park for you to get to the patient.
Yeah, because it was very chaotic. So situations like this, people tend to move in on the patients. You have to be like, hey, excuse me, move out of the way, give us some room.
You mentioned that you parked up to the right of where that red bush is on the exhibit that you were shown. There were cars parked along the roadway?
I can't remember if there were cars parked like directly in front of the house or where they were, to be honest.
Okay. So this was an intense situation. The crowd did interfere to the point where it was hard to get to the patients. That's how thick the crowd was, so to speak. But the defense attorney wants to know, were you threatened? Did you feel threatened? He's like, no, that's not what was happening. It was just they were worried. They wanted us to hurry. Now, in the report, there was apparently someone standing, a patient standing, but he said he didn't write that. His partner may have written a supplemental note, and she may have encountered someone standing, but when he got there, everybody was lying down. When asked about the alcohol, he said he didn't witness anyone drinking, but I mean, he was probably focused on more important things at that time, right? Now he's going to go over the wound that he saw, that he witnessed that night.
That you have described to us, rendering a lot of aid to. You noticed that there was a puncture wound to the left lower chest, correct?
Yeah, left lower chest or upper abdomen right in that area.
That was the only wound that you saw on this individual that you were treating?
That's the only one I observed at that time, yes.
And you described that it was rather dark in the area, correct?
Yes, sir.
You said that an officer may have been providing some light to you.
I remember there being a flashlight at one point, but it wasn't consistent the entire time.
This is so important. It just dawned on me that he's also mentioning this again and again. He's mentioning the visibility, and I think that's going to be part of the theory of the defense. It was dark. The defendant couldn't see what he was doing. He was being threatened. The crowd was wild. People were fighting him. He was getting injured. This is all adding to the self-defense, right? People were drinking. It was an obnoxious, chaotic situation. I'm just guessing, because again, no opening statements, but he has asked every witness so far what the visibility was like. I think that's important because it obviously got brighter when they had flashlights, when they had cars there with headlights. So I think that's important. But he only observed one wound on Jimmy. And it was, again, he said, in the lower left abdomen. We're going to get to that question again that I told you about.
And sir, you've been called here today to tell us what you witnessed when you responded to the scene.
Yes.
You've done that to the best of your ability.
Yes, sir.
But if what these jurors are interested in is why Mr. Valle did what he did that night, you can't really be of any help to these jurors.
No, sir.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Thank you.
Yep, there it is again. He confirmed he can't provide any insight into why Mr. Valle committed the stabbing, allegedly, right? He only responded to the aftermath. And this day went by pretty fast. There are, of course, more witnesses we're going to get to, but I just want to point out, yes, it's starting out a little slower. We have to get to understand everything. But day two, all of Jimmy's friends, acquaintances, high school students who are now going off to college, they're all going to be taking the stand and painting a much different picture. But the next witness was Jeffrey McKe. He's a paramedic with Valley EMS, and McKe has been a paramedic for over 6 years. Let me put him up on the screen while I'm talking. Oh, that's a back. He has been a paramedic for over 6 years, and he was an EMT for 10 years prior to this. He was also a combat medic, and he was in the Connecticut National Guard. He got there just after midnight, and he was, I believe, the first provider for advanced life-saving. And he came with lights and sirens. He was directed to the victim that was lying on the front lawn. There was a lot of medical debris already there because we know that the person that was just on the stand, he already talked about being there. The scene was chaotic. Many juveniles were present, and people were already performing CPR when he got there. So let's listen.
And you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury
what you observed.
So upon arrival, I observed a chaotic scene with a lot of younger individuals crying, screaming, upset, and I observed the Shelton ambulance on scene with a patient in the grass there performing CPR with a bystander as well as PD officers around. And that's the patient I was directed to. I know there was another paramedic on scene who had triaged, and that's the patient, my most critical patient I was directed to.
So were you aware that there were other patients at the scene?
I was told there was en route to the scene, and there were providers on scene that directed me to the patient that was in the front lawn that you mentioned right there.
Okay, and when you got to that patient, can you tell us what care, if any, you provided to that patient?
Sure. So I got the report from the EMT that was performing CPR on the patient, and he had placed an AED and an oral airway in the patient upon finding out that the patient was pulseless. So I had them continue CPR and connected them to my cardiac monitor via the AED pads that were previously placed. Did a brief pause, checked for a pulse, checked for breathing on the patient, as well as checked the initial heart rhythm, which was asystole. Upon doing that and determining there was no pulse and no breathing, directed CPR to be continued, as well as ventilation with oxygen.
What is asystole?
Asystole is essentially flatline, where there's no cardiac electrical activity originating atop the heart or in the heart whatsoever.
How sad is that? That's just hearing that is just, I don't know. It's sad to even hear that someone had flatlined, as they described it, flatlined. I don't know. Just knowing that they're young too.
When you got to the scene, what did you observe about the patient outside of your assessment of the patient medically? What did you observe about the patient?
The patient was a young male in his teens. The patient appeared to be in good shape, healthy.
Did you observe any wounds on the patient?
I did. Observed a small puncture wound right under the patient's left nipple in the area of the chest with a chest seal that was placed on there prior to my arrival.
Was there any active bleeding at that point?
There was bleeding in and around the site. The chest seal was doing a decent job of controlling that bleeding, and there was direct pressure being held on that upon my arrival.
And when you medically, when you assessed the patient at that point in time, and you said they were in asystole,
Yes.
what steps did you take at that point when you determined that CPR should continue and there was a flatline?
So at that point, I continued my trauma assessment on the patient to determine if there were any other wounds or hemorrhage that needed to be stopped, while the EMT partner and the other provider provided quality CPR to the patient.
Wow. Flatlined. Nothing they could do but continue CPR, because that's important. Because even if it's still giving oxygen to the brain, it's still helping in case there's any chance this person can be revived. So they're doing that. And he also noted, the EMT had already done some triage, checked for what was going on, had performed some things. And he also checked for other wounds or bleeding, and there were none found. So he determined he needed to be transported, and we'll talk about that right now.
And then if there was any additional bleeding that needed to be rectified before moving the patient.
How long would you say that you were on the scene providing medical care to that patient when you got there?
No more than 15 minutes from the time I made patient contact to getting the patient in the back of the ambulance and starting transport.
Why did you withdraw? Did you determine that the patient needed to be transported to the hospital?
I did.
Okay, and why did you determine that?
I determined that because upon arrival of the first responders, they said the patient still had a pulse, a palpable pulse, and just prior to my arrival, that had been lost. So it's technically what's called a witnessed arrest, which a provider witnessed the cardiac arrest. So there's still a chance for us to provide life-saving measures. And that
I had never actually heard it said that way before, so I was glad that they explained it. So somebody witnessed a pulse, and therefore they transported him to attempt to save his life. Now, while inside the ambulance, he did explain they could not get a vein because it was collapsed at this point. So they actually had to drill into his shin bone so that they could deliver epinephrine. And they gave 4 doses, but it did not work. It didn't do what it's intended to do. It didn't revive him. He didn't have the pulse wasn't coming back. So they were still applying pressure to control the bleeding in the chest, but the chest seal had failed at this point. And throughout the ride, he said that he was looking at the patient every 2 minutes. He had no pulse, no breathing, and it was flatline on the monitor. And the drive was another 15 or 20 minutes. And then when they arrived, he was handed off to the hospital staff, and they were waiting for him. So now for cross-examination. I believe that attorneys, I think there might be another attorney doing cross this time. Let's see, hold on. Nope, it's still Smith. So he's going to be asked if there was only one puncture wound, he's going to confirm, yes, there was no other ones found on his body and no additional trauma. But let's see what else he asks.
Did you see any signs of alcohol or drinking when you got to the scene?
I did not notice.
That's what I wanted to catch. He said he did not notice. And I'm thinking, he is worried about saving someone's life. I don't think he's scanning to find out whether people have been drinking or not.
Do you recall the conditions that evening? Was it rainy, misty?
It was misty. The roads were damp.
The grass itself, do you recall whether or not the grass was wet?
It was damp.
That was interesting, right? You're going to hear weather being talked about. I think this is going to play into their theory as well. Did the weather cause him to slip? Could that be part of the defense's explanation of the case? Did the defendant slip? Was it hard to see? Was it misty? Could he not see what was going on? And this witness did confirm it was misty and the roads were damp.
That caused you to slip or anything while you were setting up?
No.
But it didn't cause the paramedic to slip. But I think it's interesting.
And then you described for us the level of support that you gave to the patient, correct?
Yes.
And that, I believe you told us, at some point you determined that he needed transport, correct?
Correct.
And you determined he needed transport because it was what you described as a witnessed arrest, correct?
Correct.
Meaning that the people who had responded to the scene had gotten some indication of a pulse, correct?
Yes.
And some heart activity, correct?
Yes.
And however, by the time you arrived, there was this witnessed arrest, which means that there was still a chance to provide life-saving measures, correct?
Yes.
And that's why.
Why do you think he's asking that? Why do you think the defense attorney would want to know whether there was still a pulse, whether, how long did it take, how long you were there? Well, of course, probably to show, oh, wait, no, the victim would have survived had you not taken this long to get there and then this long to transport and this long to make a decision. I'm not saying that's exactly what's going on, but I think that could be a reason those questions are asked.
And so, Mr. McKe, you've been brought here today, fair to say, to tell us what you witnessed and observed when you arrived on the scene.
Correct.
But if this jury was interested in knowing why Mr. Valle did what he did that night, you wouldn't be able to help them at all, would you?
I would not.
Thank you.
There it is again. The defense closed by emphasizing he could only speak to the aftermath, not the motive or any of the events that led to what happened. And there it is again, being reinforced. Okay, right before they went to lunch, they decided to call the medical examiner. I was like, oh, right now, this is going to be a long testimony, but actually it was shorter than I thought it would be. Now, this can be hard for some to hear. He's going to describe Jimmy's injuries in detail. But first, he introduced himself. So I will put him up on the screen. That was not a very good pause.
What?
I'm sorry, sir. But this is Dr. James Gill. And he is the chief medical examiner for the state of Connecticut. He holds degrees from MIT and University of Connecticut, and he completed forensic pathology training in New York City. He's been the chief medical examiner in Connecticut since 2013. He said he performed, I think, over 4,000 autopsies. And he's also going to explain the difference, but we already know because of Karen Reed's trial, we already know the difference between pathology and forensic pathology. Pathology itself is disease-focused. You come in, the doctor assesses you. When you're doing forensic pathology, we're talking about suspicious or unexpected deaths, trauma, things of that nature, right? That is what we're talking about here. Now, he did not personally perform the autopsy. However, he was directly supervising Dr. Jones, who was doing her clinicals. And he reviewed everything related, the reports, the photographs, and he was right there. So let's listen about the injuries and, of course, the cause of death.
Evidence of injury was present on the body.
So there was evidence of both sharp injury and blunt injury. So sharp injuries are injuries that are caused by sharp objects like a knife, a piece of glass, and you can either have a stab injury or a cut injury. The difference is that stab wounds are deeper into the body than they are long on the skin, while like a cut or an incised wound is longer on the skin than it is deep in the body. Blunt injuries are different types of injuries. Those are injuries caused by blunt force, where a person may fall down and bruise their knee or what have you. We call those contusions. So he had some bruises as well on different parts of his body that were just very superficial.
So in addition to those superficial bruising you indicated, was there also a stab wound found on the body of James Thomas McGrath?
Yes.
And where was that stab wound located?
The stab wound was on the left chest, below the left nipple.
Can you either read or explain the directions? Within the exhibit, it indicates the directions are stated with reference to the standard anatomical planes with the body measured in the horizontal position. What does that refer to?
This is important. Let me slow it down a little bit. Okay, let me slow it down a little bit. This is important because we're going to hear about the direction of the stab wound. That's important because now you're going to visualize, if you can, where the person was in relation to Jimmy when this occurred. We don't know that, and I'm sure it's going to be explained more and more.
So we don't know what position the person was in when they were stabbed. So we always give the directions in the anatomical position, which means standing straight up with your arms at your side. So we all have the same planes of reference. So for example, in this instance, the stab wound was going from the front of his body towards the back of his body. And it was going, from the left of his body towards the right of his body.
From the left of his body to the right of his body. I like to think about what we're hearing. And obviously from the front to the back.
And then slightly upward.
And then slightly upward. Okay. So it's almost like if somebody, I don't know where the person was, but I'm just saying it's like if somebody was a little bit under him or their hand was, and they're kind of going up towards his under pit. Oh my goodness, Kimber, really? Underarm. That's kind of how I see it. Left to right. That would be up like that.
His body.
I could be wrong. Because I'm thinking, is it his right or left? And we're going to get more into this. Don't worry.
Referring again to states 10 under injuries, external and internal, the last sentence of that paragraph indicates the injuries were labeled A through C for descriptive purposes only.
Oh, we don't need to know this part. I'm sorry. I should have stopped it already. Oh, actually, no.
What's the purpose of that? Explain to the jury.
So there were bruises and there was a stab wound. There's no way for us to tell the sequence, which came first, which came second.
They're just numbering them. What he's saying is just because something is wound 1 doesn't mean it happened first.
Directing your attention to page 2 and to page 3 of State's Exhibit number 10, under where it says A, stab wound of torso. Can you please read what that paragraph says out loud to the jury?
So a stab wound is centered 21 7/8 of an inch from the top of the head and 5 1/4 inches left of the anterior midline. It's oriented obliquely, which means kind of at an angle.
So see how he's putting his hand? If you're watching, he's putting his hand like that. So I was figuring, okay, the person came from the left and went up towards his left underarm.
With a sharp edge angled to the upper left.
Right. Okay. So the sharp edge, which would be the point of the knife, up towards the left.
And a blunt edge directed down and to the right. It is 1 1/16 of an inch long, slit-like perforation on the surface of the skin without natural skin tension. After penetrating the skin and the muscle, the knife proceeded through the left 6 to 7 intercostal space, that's between the ribs, and perforated the pericardial sac and the left ventricle of the heart.
Oh my gosh. I mean, just think about how fast this can go wrong.
There was approximately 750 milliliters of clotted blood in the pericardial sac around the heart, and approximately 1.8 liters of liquid and clotted blood in the left pleural cavity, which is the left chest cavity. And then the direction of the penetration is front to back, left to right, and slightly upward. In the estimated depth, that's how deep the stab wound was, the estimated depth of this penetration is approximately 2.5 to 3.5 inches depth.
Wow. So it's estimated 2.5 to 3.5 inches in depth. It entered front to back, left to right, he said. So it's like that. So you're going up towards his upper left underarm, slightly upward. He lost a lot of blood, and that was a fatal loss of blood. He's also going to talk about some bruises that were on his right chest and his extremities. Now, some of these were older and they were not related, and that's because he's a lacrosse player, so I'm not surprised. Now, all of his organs, including brain, lungs, his heart, they were all examined like they always are in an autopsy, and he was a healthy, normal, non-diseased individual, meaning there were no other reasons for him to die other than the fact he had been stabbed. So now we're going to keep going.
Dr. Gill, based on your training and experience in the field of forensic pathology, with respect to the stab wound to the torso, perforating the heart, what effect would you expect such an injury to have on a person's ability to survive?
Well, it would not be immediately incapacitating. The person would still remain conscious for a period of time until they've lost enough blood and the heart can no longer maintain the blood pressure. Then they would lose consciousness. And again, if the heart and the circulation isn't restarted, they would die.
Were any samples or specimens collected during the post-mortem examination of and submitted for laboratory analysis?
Yes.
And do you recall what specimens were collected?
There were several specimens collected for toxicology, including blood, vitreous fluid from the eye. We usually collect liver as well, and urine.
And
So we are going to be talking about the toxicology, and that's why I wanted to point this part out, because of course alcohol is going to be talked about by the defense mostly. But since people are asking in the questions, Jennifer had said something about pulling a knife shows intent in my opinion, but I don't know much about this case other than what I heard here tonight. I should have linked my summary. I did a summary last night where I went into detail about everything we do know that's not in the courtroom hearing this day by day, but that might give you a good idea if you want to follow this case, because we will be talking about the recaps every day. So if you do want to follow it, you're going to understand a lot more about what happened that night, allegedly. But this was a group of teenagers who were already kind of threatening each other. And one of them said, "Why don't you pull up?" He was in a group chat, and they did pull up, and they are rival high schools, and a big brawl occurred, and one person lost their life and other victims were harmed.
What tests were conducted on the blood of the body that was collected?
So we did our kind of routine toxicology testing, which includes alcohol and all the common drugs of misuse, as well as other medications and so forth.
I'm going to direct your attention back to States 10 on page 5 of the toxicology report, withdrawn. Page 5, what does it read under the heading toxicology?
So it gives the positive findings that were detected in the blood and the vitreous fluid from the eye.
Okay. Directing your attention to page 2 out of 3 of the toxicology report. Do you recall, or can you read what the blood alcohol content, or BAC, of the body of said James Thomas McGrath was?
Yes.
And what was that?
It was 0.2 gram percent or gram 100 per 100 milliliters.
Referring again to States 10, to the very first page of that exhibit where it says final diagnosis. Please read what it says.
Stab wound of torso with perforation of heart, hemothorax, approximately 1.8 liters. That's blood in the chest cavity. And then hemopericardium, that's blood in the pericardial sac, approximately 75 milliliters. And then superficial blunt impact injuries of the trunk and the extremities, the bruises.
Based upon your review of the postmortem examination of James Thomas McGrath, what was the cause of death in this case, Dr. Gill?
The stab wound of the torso.
And what was the manner of death?
Homicide.
So I know a lot of you are confused about what's going on. We're just the 13th juror, so we don't know yet. We just know a fight happened. We don't know where people were standing. We haven't gotten any information about who was involved, but I will tell you, day 2 is going to be way more clarifying. You're going to see actual pictures. Don't jump ahead. I think one other program on YouTube that I know of has already streamed that day, but try not to jump ahead if you do want to do the recaps. But there will be photos from a lot of people's phones. There will be videos. There will be ring camera footage. So you're going to get a much better understanding. But let me tell you, there's a lot going on. And I know somebody did mention, I just want to put this one up on the screen. Did Jimmy have some kind of weapon too? Otherwise, self-defense would be hard to claim. I agree and I disagree. I think if you are being attacked by multiple people and you feel as though your life is in danger and you need to use a deadly weapon, I still think it could be a self-defense claim because it's you against multiple, right? But there are multiple on both sides. So I think in that case, it probably will be hard to prove, but we don't know yet because we don't even know what happened yet. I think what's important here is that they just got into his alcohol level, and his blood alcohol level was what do you say, a 0.20? It was above the legal driving limit, but he is not driving. However, he is underage. And remember, the defense wants to accentuate the fact that all of these teenagers were drinking. The cause of death was a stab wound and the heart being perforated. And then the manner of death was, of course, homicide, death caused by another person. I am sure, and I was sure, that the defense was going to harp on the blood alcohol level, but now it is time for cross-examination. It moves kind of fast.
All right. You've told us that in conducting your autopsy, you discovered a 1 1/16 inch long slit-like perforation in the chest, correct?
Yes.
And you've described that both in your testimony and in the report as being the
The defendant was 16 at the time.
result of a knife, correct?
Yes.
And was that based on information that you had from other people involved with this investigation?
I think it's probably a combination. The features, the anatomical features are what we see with a knife injury. And I believe we had history that he had been stabbed.
And so did you come to that conclusion that it was a knife based on your own observations or based on something you had been told?
Again, I think it was a combination. The features are kind of classic findings for a knife. I really couldn't think of much else that would cause it.
No other sort of sharp object like a piece of glass or something of that nature?
A piece of glass wouldn't cause such a straight injury with a single blunt angle and a sharpened angle. And to that depth, I think it'd be very unlikely that a piece of glass would do that.
This is interesting. I know exactly why, or I think I know exactly why the defense is pointing out, was it a piece of glass? Could it have been anything other than a knife? And the doctor said, no, this was a knife due to the smooth, precise, and deep penetration. And I'm thinking, we know it's a knife, but I get it because the defense has to show that there could be a possibility it could have been something else. The only reason the medical examiner brought up glass earlier was to explain the difference between a sharp object and a blunt object, not to insinuate a piece of glass caused this particular wound. But all I could think about was the defense kind of saying, well, the defendant was being threatened. He grabbed something off the ground. It was a bottle or it was a piece of glass, and that's what he used. He didn't bring a knife because, like you're saying in the chat, a lot of people are like, I don't understand. Did he bring a knife? That is what is being alleged, that he brought a knife. He intended to go there to fight. That has kind of been established through the text messages, but we haven't even gotten there yet. But from what I told you last night, there were text messages. So they were summoned there. But the defense is going to argue, no, they were lured there.
You told us that you had ordered what was your standard specimen testing for toxicology reports, correct?
Yes,
And that included a toxicology for alcohol, correct?
correct.
And did you tell us that the blood alcohol of the deceased was a 0.2?
Correct.
Did that have any bearing on your findings in this case?
It played no physiologic role in his death. He would have died from this stab injury whether or not he had alcohol in his system.
I think that's important. He had alcohol in his system, but that was not a contributing factor to him dying. But again, the defense is going to say over and over again, look how intoxicated everyone was.
And Dr. Gill, you've been called here today to tell us what you witnessed and observed as it relates to this autopsy, correct?
Yes,
And you've done that to the best of your ability.
yes.
But if this jury is interested in knowing why Mr. Valle did what he did that night, you can't tell us anything that would help them, can you?
No.
Every single witness is just like, no, because they can't. He can't speak to why the defendant committed the act, only to the cause and manner of death. So now there's just going to be a short redirect by the prosecution. He was asked, based on his experience with hundreds, maybe thousands of stab wounds, can he confirm that this was a knife? He mentioned that he's done one autopsy one time with 80 stab wounds on one body. He's seen a lot. So I'm not going to play that. Just let it be known. He has seen a lot. And yes, he confirmed it was a knife. Someone said, I'd love to hear your insights as to why you think they're asking certain questions. That's so interesting. I don't know if I'm smart, but I know I feel like I'm good at observing things, but thank you. That is a compliment. So let's move to, oh, poor doctor. I'm sorry I paused you like that. Sorry about that. We are going to get into the next witness. And this is, I think, did we already hear from him? No, we didn't. We just know how to say his name now. It's Bango. So this is Sergeant Richard Bango. He's from Shelton Police Department. He worked for the police department for nearly 25 years. And he's had 14 years as a detective, and he was on call and off duty when he came to the scene. This was shortly after midnight, and it was when he got there, he knew that there was one potential fatal injury. Again, he's going to describe it as chaotic. Dozens and dozens of juveniles were scattered around, and at this point, he said the police tape was already up. The lighting was dark, but it wasn't pitch black. The lawn at this point had clothing and debris on it, and that was considered evidence. So they were all collected. You are going to be able to see some of the clothing in this video, so hang tight for that because it is interesting, because then you'll be able to see, they do cut it to get it off the patient, but you're going to be able to see where the knife went in. Okay, so we're going to show this part right here.
Now, with regard to this particular piece of evidence that was seized from the front of 43 Laurel Glen, why was this seized? Is there anything on this piece of evidence that would indicate some type of disruption in the fabric?
Yes, there's a defect in the shirt.
Counsel, are you able to see?
Yes, please use a microphone.
Yes, Your Honor.
You can feel free to relocate if you want.
Thank you.
In the shirt in the lower left side. Great.
Can be kind of hold up.
Yeah.
This one wasn't cut open to get the patient out, so you were actually looking at what appears to be, allegedly, a hole from a knife.
So right to the left side of the shirt, it would be mid-torso potentially?
Yes.
And I already know that y'all are going to be like, wait a minute. Whose shirt is this? Whose shirt is that? Whose pants is it? I know. And you know what? They're not clear about it. And I think they're not clear for a reason. So let's just listen, take it all in. And then I think it will be explained when they start showing photographs of everyone and they're going to start matching the clothing. So we saw what looked like a blue shirt with a hole in the left side.
I'll show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit 23. It's been marked as a full exhibit. Again, is this a t-shirt that was seized from the front yard of 43 Laurel Glen?
Yes, it was.
Here comes the cameraman using the computer screen instead of the big screen.
Okay. Again, was seized in the normal course of packaging, how you would package items of evidentiary value.
Yes, it was seized, photographed before it was seized and put in that bag, and then later at the police department it was photographed again.
This is going to be referred to as the Marvel Duck shirt.
And when things go back to the police department, how are things secured? Does anybody have access to your evidence?
No, only the evidence officer. It would go from the seizing officer or detective right to the evidence officer into evidence.
I'll show you State's 24. It's been marked as a full exhibit. Again, with these items that were seized from the area of the yard of 43 Laurel Glen.
Yes.
And were these seized, again, in the same manner in which the previous two exhibits that we just spoke about were seized by the Shelton Police Department?
Yes.
From what I can tell, don't quote me saying this is a fact, it looks like this shirt is ripped. That's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing like maybe a portion missing on the bottom. I can't be sure.
I'll show you State's 25.
And now this right here is a green sweatshirt. I know it looks kind of pale. And a navy blue shirt that looks like it has a blood stain on it.
These items in State's 25, items that were also seized from the front yard of 43 Laurel Glen.
Yes.
And I'm going to show you State's 26. Does this appear to be the same sweatshirt and t-shirt, just maybe flipped over from State's 25?
Yes.
You can see how green it is in this photo.
In State's 27, again, same t-shirt and sweatshirt.
Yes.
Now, I want to direct your attention to this area here where you see this the individual who took the picture, I assume their hand is here.
Okay. Pay close attention to this item of clothing.
You see whether or not there are defects in the clothing there?
Yes.
And again, that would be, for the record, I'm pointing to what appears to be a defect in a black shirt where the individual who has a black glove on.
He's saying black shirt. It might be a navy shirt. Just want to point that out. Don't worry. I know this is so frustrating. When I was watching this, I was like, wait, what's going on? Whose shirt is that? What? A sweatshirt? Who is wearing what? These are very confusing at this point. But what this is supposed to do is support the narrative that a stabbing occurred because there's holes in fabric. That's all that's going on right now. They're not trying to match it to any victims. They're just saying, are there holes? Are there evidence there was a fight? That's all that's going on. So I wanted to let you know what was happening before you all freak out and go like, what's going on? Did you miss something? We're going to get there. Promise. So let's go.
So that night, myself and other members of the Shelton Police Department interviewed witnesses, attendees of that party.
Now, when you interviewed these witnesses, let me take you back. When you got there, what was the scene like?
It was very hectic. There was dozens of kids running around, their parents showing up looking for them. Hard to keep everybody, kind of trying to keep them off the yard, trying to ascertain who saw what, who was at the party, if anyone arrived afterwards. So we did our best to try to speak with everybody there.
Did you have it when you spoke to many witnesses there?
Yes.
And when you spoke to the witnesses there, did you have any indication that alcohol may have been present?
Yes, so there was a bottle, I believe it was a bottle of whiskey, if memory serves, in the yard. Also, upon speaking with a lot of the juveniles, it appeared they were drinking. I didn't feel sobriety anybody, but I was more concentrated on the stabbing, but it appeared they were drinking.
I think he was the first to actually say that they appeared to be intoxicated. He observed the way they were, a bottle that was there of maybe whiskey, he said. But now let's talk about those interviews. We're going quickly. We're almost done.
Based on your interviews of those witnesses, what, if anything, did you do next?
So I interviewed a witness at the scene. I believe his name was Enrico Fiola. After interviewing him and his mother, we ascertained that just prior to the incident, a Honda Pilot arrived on scene with a group of St. Joe's kids. Also, after the incident, they fled in the car. So
I should point this out before anyone gets confused because they're going to start saying St. Joe's kids, Shelton kids. There are 3 rival high schools. There's Shelton High. There's St. Joseph's, which is a private school. Shelton High is a public school. And then there's Fairview. Fairfield? Wait, Fairview is Karen Reed. Fairfield, forgive me. Fairfield Prep. And that is where Jimmy went. So that'll just give you an idea.
we were able to get the occupants of that car. From that point, we went and interviewed Mackenzie Trefficante, who was also an occupant in the car. After members of the police department spoke with everybody else there, and I spoke with those 2 witnesses, we developed Raul Valle as a suspect.
And is Mr. Valle in court today?
He is.
And what is he wearing?
He's wearing a blue jacket.
And can you point him out for the court, please?
I can. He's sitting right there.
Your Honor, may the record reflect the witnesses identified the defendant in this case?
Court will let the record reflect that the witnesses identified Mr. Raul Valle as the defendant. Thank you.
Now, based on your interviews and your development of suspect and identified a suspect vehicle, what efforts did you take at the scene prior to leaving the scene?
So before we left the scene, we knew that a knife was used in the stabbing. We did look for the knife on the exterior property of 43 Laurel Glen and the road and the surrounding roads. Very difficult that night. It was dark. There was a lot of people around, and we didn't have any information exactly where the knife was at that point. But we did look with our flashlights, with our car spotlights. That carried on into the next day. Moving fast forward, we had 2 state police cadaver dogs arrive in the daylight, and they searched the entire area, the surrounding streets, the property, with members of the police department looking for the knife.
And if I direct your attention to states
This is going to become important, as I'm sure you can guess. The knife.
1, can you indicate on states 1 where the general area you conducted the initial search for the knife you just described?
Sure. So here's the property with the front yard. We started here, but we actually looked all up and down the roads. This entire area. We also did a neighborhood canvass and spoke to all the neighbors. one, did you see a knife? And number
Spoiler alert, Lenova, they are going to show the defendant's injuries and I will be showing them on the screen. You're going to get there.
two, if you do find a knife, please not touch it and call us.
Now, Your Honor, if the record can reflect, the witness has indicated on States 1, the area including all of Adams Drive, all of Laurel Glen to Farmhouse Lane, and up Farmhouse Lane in that general area.
Any dispute with that summary, Attorney Smith?
No, Your Honor.
All
no
right.
objection.
So he showed you on the map. I showed you Google Maps yesterday as well of this location. And you can go back to that video if you want to see exactly where this occurred. It's a very suburban area. There's big houses here, big lots, lots of forest areas behind. And what he wanted to point out before this is through interviews, they identified a Honda Pilot. And yesterday, I did not know this. How could I have known? I assumed it was the defendant's car. We're going to get to the fact that it wasn't the defendant's car. But they were told a Honda Pilot SUV fled the scene with a group of St. Joseph students, one of which was the defendant. Pointed to the defendant in court, blue suit. He was identified through the investigation, through interviews. But then they search for the knife. And they look with flashlights, spotlights, cadaver dogs. They couldn't find anything. Then they got a search warrant for that Honda, but they couldn't locate the Honda. And the defendant wasn't answering their calls. They were trying to get a hold of the car. They didn't know whose car it was at this point. But finally, they located it and they had it towed. And guess what? They also call it a Sally Port. It's the Sally Port at Shelton PD. So let's take a look at that.
Or to show the condition it was in when we seized it. And
Showing you States 31. Again, what is States 31?
that's a picture of the windshield of the Pilot.
Showing the defect in the windshield.
Yes.
States 32.
That was so quick. Did you see the, hold on a second. Let's look at that one more time.
When we seized it. And
Showing you States 31.
There's some kind of crack, dent in the windshield of the car. This will come up again.
Again, what is States 31?
that's a picture of the windshield of the Pilot.
Showing the defect in the windshield.
Yes.
States 32. Picture of, what does this picture show?
It's the interior of the Pilot.
What would be the purpose of showing, taking pictures of the interior of the pilot?
Well, the state of it was when we took it, and if we were going to seize any evidence, the state of the evidence it would be in.
This would have been taken prior to any seizure of any evidence?
Yes.
States 33, this is obviously the driver's side again, picture of,
I couldn't tell if that was blood on the ground or if it was dirt on the ground, but you can see right underneath the pedals there.
driver's side of the pilot.
Yes.
Now, once you were able to seize the Pilot and apply for a search warrant, and execute a search warrant, you indicated prior in your testimony that you were able to secure an arrest warrant.
Cuff. Explain and I'll tell you the relevance if I remember what you missed. Let me know.
For the defendant.
Yes.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what steps that you took after that arrest warrant was signed, what steps you took to execute that warrant?
After we secured the arrest warrant, I believe it was the
I think they were hiding the car. That's just my assumption.
Tuesday of the 18th. We spent the day into the night searching for Mr. Valle. We were unable to locate him. We reached out to both his parents, but they were uncooperative in helping us locate him. It turned into the following day.
Rule of thumb, be cooperative. If your child's in trouble, cooperate because it only makes you look worse.
We could not locate him until about 3 a.m. He turned himself into the Shelton Police Department.
He turned himself in. We talked about
And
that
when
in
he
the last
turned
video.
himself into the Shelton Police Department,
Oh, sorry about that.
what was done as part of the booking process of the defendant?
Well, the standard booking process, and we took, the booking photos. But I believe it was Lieutenant McPadden who was on scene when he turned himself in. He took photos of Mr. Valle because he had some apparent injuries on him.
He had injuries. This is going to be important, of course. I'm just going to say it doesn't necessarily need a trigger warning, but because I am going to be showing injuries, I want you to know they're not severe, but there are going to be injuries. But I think it should be noted where the injuries are. And the windshield. Okay, so Cuff said you didn't know the relevance of the windshield. We don't know yet, but they're going to bring it up again. We don't know if this was a prior prior defect in the windshield or whether it was caused during the fight. So I think that's what's going to be important coming up. And they have to bring in witnesses to talk about that, right? So that's why we haven't gotten there yet. But yeah, it is interesting. Now, let's look at some of the injuries that are on the defendant.
18th of 2022.
Yes.
States
Make sure.
35. Again, what does states 35 show?
A picture of Raul Valle on that date.
Yeah, we'll just keep going and then we'll backtrack.
States 36.
Same.
Now you can see a bruise above his eyelid on his left eye.
A little closer. You could see some marks up there near his forehead, light marks.
States 37.
That's the back of Raul Valle's head. Raul Valle's head.
Does there appear to be any injuries to the back of his head?
I can't see anything from here.
States 38.
There's a tiny mark. If you look closely, I wish I could show you my new program. I'll be able to circle things on the screen. So that'll be really cool. John and I are working it out. But if you look at his ear and then you go to the right of his ear, there's like a little mark on the back of his head.
Showing you states 38. That's the back of his head again.
Oh, they're going to zoom in.
From here at this angle, I can maybe a little bit of redness under the hairline.
Okay. States 39.
Scratch marks.
That's Mr. Valle's right arm. There seems to be some light scratch marks.
States 40. Seems to be a
This looks to be the most severe injury he had.
older wound.
It does appear that that's his right hand. It appears that it looks like it's scabbed over a little bit.
So this they did not believe happened during the fight. I just wanted to point that out. It was scabbed over. So they thought this was from a previous situation. And then Cuff pointed out, oh my God, he's so young and cute. Why? Just why? I guess we'll find out.
States 41.
But I agree. So young, so much ahead of them.
Left hand.
And yes, Cuff, they are showing the computer screen. I really hope the cameraman or woman is watching this tonight and will know, just go to the big screen. Go to the big screen.
His left hand, a scrape on his palm.
States 42. Any markings on his hand there?
Some light marks on his outer wrist. That's really all I can see there.
In states 43. Again, this is his left hand. Any markings there?
I can't see any.
Okay, so those were the injuries. Tell me what you think. Just tell me what you think. There were some scratches that I saw, minor injuries, old injuries to his palms, like he might have fallen, but I would say minor. But there was also some ring camera footage. So I wanted to get into that. I really did want to get into that. Oh, when you see this, my blood pressure, I wear the Oura ring. Where am I? I'm curious if my blood pressure actually went up the first time I watched this, and I bet you we could test it on this right now because I'm telling you right now, my blood pressure was rising. So prepare yourself.
So during the investigation, we learned after the Lazy Brook party or the Lazy Brook incident, the St. Joe's kids got into the Honda Pilot and they arrived at 43 Laurel Glen.
Context really quick. There was a fight earlier in the night at another house. Same situation. Kids partying. Raul and his friends came up. They started drinking. Whether it was the alcohol that came from the house, I don't know, but they were unwanted. They were told to leave, and allegedly Raul took his motorcycle helmet and he hit someone in the head with it, or just hit someone with it. And then when they left, they got into a group chat and they were threatening each other. Somebody dropped a pin, told these guys to come duke it out. Basically, they used different words. I think like pull up or whatever. And that is how they ended up at this second location on Laurel Glen.
And an incident occurred in the street or an altercation. So the Honda Pilot drove off down the road in the area of 36 at the first incident or the first altercation between the St. Joe's students and the Shelton High students. Upon
Kind of want to repeat that. Hang on one second. Okay, I'm sorry.
Important.
So during the investigation, we learned after the Lazy Brook party or the Lazy Brook incident,
The Lazy Brook was the first house.
the St. Joe's kids got into the Honda
The St. Joe's kids include Raul.
Pilot and they arrived at 43 Laurel Glen and an incident occurred in the street or an altercation. So the Honda Pilot drove off down the road in the area of 36 at the first incident or the first altercation between the St. Joe's students and the Shelton High students. Upon securing that video from the homeowner, I believe his name was Ken Tuttle, we were able to find the Honda Pilot pulling up from the direction of Laurel Glen and stopping right in front of his house.
And if I may approach the witness, Your Honor.
Blood pressure is going to rise.
Showing you it's been marked as State's Exhibit 44 for identification purposes. You recognize State's 44?
Yes,
And what is State's 44?
that's a video of the 36 Laurel Glen ring camera.
Is this the same videos that you seized from Ken
This is when the case gets interesting to me.
Tuttle pursuant to this investigation?
I didn't personally, but yes, I've seen it before.
And are the videos on this, have you viewed this prior to today's testimony?
Yes, I have.
And do these videos contain two videos from different angles of what occurred just prior to and just after the incident that occurred at 43 Laurel Glen?
Yes, they do.
State would offer this as a full exhibit.
I think it was the Shelton High students that were having the party that they pulled up to. They weren't wanted. And then someone from Shelton, if I'm correct about this, was in a group chat with them, kind of taunting them allegedly to come to this new location where they could hit the streets and throw some punches to like set it straight.
Attorney Smith, any
No
word here?
objection, Your Honor.
Okay, so with no objection, court will go ahead and enter into evidence state's full, I believe you said 44. 44, thank you.
You viewed this prior to today's testimony.
I have.
Can you brief?
So my husband made a point. I'm just going to put it on here. He said, don't come at me. If he was a sheltered teen, they may feel like they'll never have to deal with real consequence. I don't think anyone's going to come at you. We're all just a 13th juror, have our own perspectives and backgrounds. We don't know much about them yet from the trial, but obviously I've told you facts that are not in evidence at this point. And yes, it does seem like they all come from good families, whether that means that they've been sheltered. I think that would be something we would have to learn through more evidence, because I don't know, because there are 3 different schools. It is a private school, does cost money to go to his school. So I would assume if they were comparing maybe the public school kids and the private school kids, perhaps they're more sheltered at the private school. But good point. I can definitely understand where that's coming from.
Briefly tell, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, and I want to publish this with the permission of the court, but what we're about to watch, if you can.
So these are 2 angles of a rim camera, one from the door and one from another front of the house that shows directly into the street. When you watch it, you see from left to right, the Honda Pilot will pull up and stop directly in front of 36 Laurel Glen. A bunch of people get out. This first video is right around 11:40, so this is before the incident at 43 occurred. We asked the homeowner, Mr. Tuttle, if this video is in real time, and he said it was. The kids get out, and while they're standing out of the car, a bunch of people come running up from Laurel Glen. There's a interaction, an argument. You can hear people yelling, not exactly what they said.
So you're hearing this? When the Honda Pilot arrives, it's before midnight. And this neighbor's house is close by, so he's catching basically what happened. The car pulls up and people run to the car, and there's some kind of altercation going on there. Now, spoiler alert, they're rocking the vehicle. These kids are rocking the vehicle. So that's what's happening.
The Honda Pilot then drives away and comes back. And then there's a second video that occurred after the incident, because the timeline occurs from our 911 calls. And right when this was, it was right before midnight.
This camera footage is not going to pick up the fight. This is right near where it happened. So it catches the pilot coming, the Honda pilot coming, a little bit of an altercation, it driving away, it coming back the other way, and then fleeing or leaving afterward.
Where the Honda pilot again comes from the same direction, 43 Laurel Glen, stops. Bunch of people get out, another car pulls up, and somebody gets out and jumps in another car, and they all flee.
By the way, I did not write anything in my description this time. It's on the other video. So if you want to quickly go look at the last video I did, it does describe what happened.
With your permission, I'd like to publish to the jury.
All right, why don't you go ahead and publish states 44?
Oh, there's that wall again. Okay, wait, let me make sure. Yeah, I'm good. If you listen carefully, you can hear people screaming. And you can see a group of people coming from the left towards the car. The defendant is in the car. My blood pressure was going up when they raced like that, when they hit the gas. Here comes the next viewpoint, I believe, of the same incident. Oh my goodness.
This next video is this different angle of the same video,
It's the same video, just a different angle.
and there's no sound on this video?
I don't believe so.
Pink sound.
This is a better angle, in my opinion, because you can see kind of the Honda pilot there. Looks like they might be talking to somebody at the window in the beginning. And it's almost like they go to leave because they see people in the rearview mirror running up, because you can see he kind of hesitated. I mean, I'm assuming here. I'm assuming. It's like he starts going. He can see people running toward him. Oh, who put their body in front of the camera? Really?
And those two videos that we
I guess that's all that showed on that one.
just watched, it was around 11:40 p.m. on May 14th of 2022.
Yes.
So that would be shortly prior to the incident.
So my husband wants to run it. He's an audio engineer. So of course he's going to say we should run the audio through. Okay. We could probably get the Ring camera separate, not in court. Yes, I can find that through FOIA things that are online.
That occurred down the street of 43 Laurel Glen.
This was before the stabbing occurred, and we're about to see after.
Yes.
And the next two videos we're about to watch happened just after the
Directly
incident.
afterwards, yes.
Here it comes. This appears to be them getting back in the car afterward. Oops, sorry, put it up right when I was showing the video. And that was all they
This
showed.
last video is the different angle of the same.
I believe so.
Same footage.
A little bit better angle coming. See, it looks like the kids are almost coming to their getaway vehicle. I'm just calling it getaway vehicle. It's just how they got away from the scene.
Again, the time on this is 11:55.
Yes. I believe our 911 call came in at about 23:58 or something close to there. So that would corroborate the time in the video.
This is all we have from the Ring camera. I know, disappointing, right? I mean, at least we could see something. I feel like I saw something. So he said that the 911 call came in around 11:58 p.m. We saw how the Honda Pilot arrives at 11:40 p.m. It looks like they were going to leave. They come back. We don't really see that part, but they return and then they flee after the stabbing occurs. Next is going to be, I believe, cross-examination. So let's take a look.
And roughly, or if you know specifically, how many attendees did you ultimately determine were at that party?
I don't have the exact number.
Was it more than 30?
Yes.
Was it more than 40?
I don't recall. I don't have that number in my head. We have it, but I don't recall the number.
Or could it have been as
So the victim was not in the car. He was out on the lawn that we don't get to see in the Ring camera. And the car was full of St. Joseph students, including the defendant. We don't know where they were sitting at this point.
many as 75 to 100?
I don't believe so.
Something less than that, but
I
maybe
would,
more
yes.
than 40?
Yes.
A large group, fair to say?
Yes, very large group.
And other than the parents that started to arrive while you were on scene, how many adults were there present? Not police officers.
When the incident occurred or when I got there?
When you got there,
When I got there were a couple of parents there, but they arrived after the incident, namely Enrico Fiola's mom, because I interviewed him in the presence of her. I was told there were some other parents there too. I'm not sure exactly which ones.
you learned at the time of the party, however, that there were almost no adults present. Is that fair to say?
Yes.
No parents that were there, at least, correct?
Yes.
There were some juveniles you've described, correct?
Yes.
However, there were also some attendees who were over the age of 18, were there not?
Yes.
And you mentioned to us the conditions that night. You described that it was dark. Was it also rainy,
I don't recall.
misty?
It could have been misty.
Do you remember whether or not the grass was wet?
I do not.
Is the roadway damp?
Yes.
Did you have your wipers on while you were driving to the scene?
I don't recall. It was 3 years ago.
It was 3 years ago. He's like, it was 3 years ago. I don't know if our wipers were on. I don't think that's something he makes a note of, but maybe you should. I don't know. I don't know how many things cops write down. But at this point, the defense was like, could there have been 70 people there? The sergeant said there were more than 40, but less than 75 to 100. But there were no parents. Were there people over 18? Yes. A few parents came afterward to come get their kids. But most of the attendees were minors under the legal drinking age. He also asked about the weather again. So I do believe that's going to be very relevant to their defense. Unsure, but it seems to be. And he confirmed that the road was at least damp. I don't recall whether I put my windshield wipers on 3 years ago. But now we are going to be getting into IDing the clothing. So now you can breathe a sigh of relief. You're going to know whose shirt is who. Kel asked, is that the big screen right above the guy's head? There's a big screen, yes, but it's not being used by the videographer for some odd reason. We only have about 4 clips left, so let's take a look at the clothing.
You know now who was wearing that Pass the Chips shirt?
Yes.
And who was that?
Pass the chips is what he's saying.
James McGrath.
That was what the victim was wearing. We're going to get into more of this.
Was that the only piece of clothing that you secured that you believe belonged to Mr. McGrath?
I personally didn't secure anything. I was interviewing why another detective did it all, but there was other items secured.
The next photograph I want to ask you about is exhibit number 23. That was
I wish they were putting the clothing on the screen while they were identifying it, but okay.
the Marvel Ducks shirt that we saw a photograph of. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Marvel Ducks. I did point that one out.
And do you know now who was wearing that shirt at the time on May 14th?
Yes, Faison Teal. I don't believe he was wearing it. I believe he had it on his person. I believe he was shirtless.
He was shirtless.
I believe so.
There was also a photo, number 24, exhibit 24, photo of a shirt and a shoe. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And do you know now who was wearing that shirt and shoe?
Is that a dark blue shirt? Dark blue shirt?
Dark blue shirt, yes, sir.
I believe that was Thomas Connery.
Also his shoe?
Yes.
White shoe. And then we saw a photo of a green sweatshirt.
Kel's making me laugh. The old grass was wet and he fell on the knife defense.
And a blue shirt, a couple of different images of that same pairing there.
This is the defense attorney, by the way.
Do you know who was wearing that?
Yes, that was Ryan Hines.
So the Pass the Chip shirt was the victim's shirt. And then the Marvel Ducks shirt was Faison Teal. That's a person's name, Faison Teal, not the color of the shirt, not to be confused. I was like, wait, Faison Teal, that sounds like a nice color. I was like, no, that is a person's name, Faison Teal. And then he was actually shirtless. We're going to see him tomorrow or Monday, but we're going to see him Monday too. He's going to have his shirt kind of like tucked into his pants, I believe, from what I remember. The dark blue shirt and his shoe that was found was from Thomas Connery. The green sweatshirt, remember that, and the blue shirt was Ryan Hines. And this is going to be important when we watch day 2. But now we're getting into the other question that's always asked by the defense.
Asked about whether or not there was any sign of any alcohol having been at this party. Do you recall that?
Yes.
And you told us that there was maybe one bottle of whiskey in the yard?
I do remember seeing a bottle of whiskey.
And that was the only indication that you had that there was drinking going on at this party?
There wasn't alcohol cans all over the street or anything like that. There was alcohol in the house, but it's hard to differentiate what the parents own or where the kids were drinking it. No one had alcohol in their hands at that time.
And that was about half an hour to 40 minutes after the initial call came in at 11.
Maybe a little bit more at that point, after everything settled down.
So there was at least a bottle of whiskey in the yard.
Yes.
And then you say there was other alcohol that was in the house, but that was hard to determine who that belonged to exactly.
Yes.
And what was the other alcohol that you found in the house?
I don't recall.
Was there a lot of evidence of alcohol in the house?
I don't recall. You got to remember the focus was the stabbing that occurred, not alcohol by minors at that point.
Because that wouldn't be pertinent to trying to understand.
It would, and I do believe there are photographs of the interior of the house. I just didn't take them.
They're going to have to get to that through a different witness because, like he said, you know, you're trying to get your point across from certain witnesses. Yes, he went in the house. Yes, he observed things, but he's not the right witness to try to get in how much alcohol, whose alcohol was it? He saw a bottle of whiskey in the front yard. There was alcohol in the house, but that was a parent's home, you know, somebody's home. So how can we know that the minors brought it? They don't know. I'm sure that's going to come up later because the defense is going to harp on this over and over again. There's more though.
Did you see those photographs?
I don't recall.
And do you recall whether or not you ever saw evidence of large piles of Solo cups or any other indication that there was in fact a large amount of drinking going on at this unsupervised party?
I do not recall a large pile of Solo cups.
Someone asked a good question. Lenova says, I have a question. The other victims who were stabbed but survived, do they know if they were stabbed by the defendant? It is alleged that they were at least 2 of them. He's charged with at least 2 other stabbings in this case.
Do you recall any evidence of a large amount of drinking going on?
People's actions, the way they were talking to me, that was probably my biggest indicator.
And what were those actions that indicated that?
You could tell people are slurring their words. Their eyes are a little glossy. Just my training experience, I could tell someone's been drinking, especially a juvenile. But that would be my biggest. Like I said, I wasn't hunting for the underage drinking at that point because I had so much going on with the witnesses and the stabbing.
Did you see any evidence that, or any indication that evidence of drinking had been cleaned up or that there was some attempt to shield you from seeing that?
I did not.
This is important, remember, but he's asking, was there evidence that they tried to hide they were drinking? Now, we haven't seen this yet, but I'm guessing that there's going to be a pile of solo cups that are hidden or thrown away. But how do we know they weren't just like thrown away during the night? We don't know. Now we are going to be talking about that windshield. So that was going to be important. We only have like a couple clips left. Thank you for being here with me. I'm interested in this case. I think there's a lot more coming.
So when you applied for the arrest warrant for Mr. Valle, is it fair to say at that point that you were going off of what you had been told by the witnesses that you had spoken to?
Yes,
That at that point did not include Mr. De Silva or Mr. Snyder, correct?
correct.
Actually, I don't think he asked about it here.
And at 3 in the morning on the 18th, I believe you described that Mr. Valle turned himself in for booking, correct?
Correct.
Yes.
There was a point where he was asked about the defect on the windshield, and he could not confirm whether it happened before the stabbing or not. Again, gonna have to use a different witness for that, right? He doesn't know. Maybe one of the kids would know. Whose ever car it is, probably gonna have to talk about that. Or someone that knows the car. This is all about the arrest warrant. He's arguing that it was gathered based on witness statements alone from 4 individuals, 2 of which were more the defendant's friends. So they were like, well, why didn't you talk to these 2 people, one of which who was in the car? Cuff. Come on, Kimber. Beer pong. Oh, I forgot about that. That's a really good defense.
And you described that when Mr. Valle turned himself in that morning, it was with Detective McPadden, correct?
Lieutenant McFadden.
McPadden, my apologies. And Lieutenant McPadden took the following photographs. Exhibit 34, correct?
Correct.
Exhibit 35?
Correct.
Oh, cameraman. Where are you going? What is
Exhibit
that?
36?
He's like zooming in on a monitor that's connected to a computer.
Correct.
And can you see in Exhibit 36 here on Mr. Valle's left eye what appears to be an injury, some bruising, and perhaps an abrasion?
I could see a small abrasion.
You don't see the bruising there?
Point out what you're looking at.
Discoloration around the eye?
I can't see it on the underneath, but I can see some on the top.
Yeah, maybe on the inner portion towards the nose.
Exhibit 37 was also taken by Lieutenant McPadden, correct?
Correct.
These photos are so blown out. They're not good photos.
38 was also taken by Lieutenant McPadden.
Correct.
I believe you described seeing some redness, possible abrasion under the hairline there.
Possible.
Exhibit 39 also taken by Lieutenant McPadden, correct?
Correct.
And there you described for us seeing the red scratch marks as well as some what appears to be bruising.
Point out the bruising.
Do you
I see the bruise.
see some discoloration here just past the elbow on the bottom of the bicep?
Possibly.
Exhibit 40 taken by Lieutenant McPadden, correct?
Correct.
And that shows a wound
Wait, what was the Blair Witch in the courtroom? I missed that.
on the heel of his right palm.
Correct.
Exhibit 41.
Oh. Humor. We need humor, right? Even in these stressful situations. Yes, we're talking about something serious. I know what you're talking about. The camera, the amateur camera. This is like, I get it. My goodness.
Also taken by Lieutenant McPadden shows some abrasion.
Oh, look at the defense attorney's ring. Don't know if my husband's still here, but wait, let me unlock the screen. You can even see it. Wait. Look. My husband has something like that. Look at that. It's a skull. Okay. It's got some style. It's gothic. I like gothic.
Injury on the left palm, as well as still that same injury on the right palm, correct?
Correct.
And then we saw exhibit 42, taken by Lieutenant McPadden.
Correct.
Yeah, it's Blair Witch because everything's so blown out on camera and it's shaking.
And and Exhibit 43, also taken by Lieutenant McGrath, correct?
Correct.
Those were taken, to the best of your knowledge, at around 3 a.m. when he turned himself in that morning.
It's unfortunate because actually he does have injuries, and had someone had more skill in taking those photos and weren't using a flash and could put them up against maybe a white wall or something and get some shadows so we can see between, what's on his skin and his skin. It's almost unfair because he does have injuries. It's just we can't see them.
Morning.
Yes.
Thank you. And that was done, again, to document apparent injuries that Mr. Valle had on him, correct?
Yes.
That's more than the standard booking photo that's taken of a person, correct?
Not everyone's booked for murder.
Do you hear him? He's like, not when someone's booked for murder. He's like, this is more than regular booking.
Beg your pardon?
It was a murder case, so if we saw someone, let's say in an assault, and they had apparent injuries, we would take photographs of them, more so than just the booking photo.
It's standard to take a booking photo, correct?
Yes.
When you notice injuries that you want to document, then you take more photos
Yes.
of those injuries, correct? And that's what was done in this case,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
Did Mr. Valle ask you to take those photos?
I do not know. I wasn't there.
Interesting, right? Why'd you take these photos? Well, they were supposed to be to document his injuries, but fail at documenting his injuries. All right, here's our last clip of the day. It's been a lot, but this is going to be more about the ring footage.
Said that over the next several months, you tried to interview Mr. De Silva and Mr. Snyder, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, you couldn't do that until November, right?
Correct.
In fact, you weren't able to do that until November 2nd with Mr. Snyder, correct?
All of a sudden, the defense attorney is giving me Johnny Depp vibes. He wasn't before, but all of a sudden now I can't unhear that he kind of sounds like him.
I believe that's the date.
And you believe that the date for Mr. De Silva was December 6th, right?
Sounds about right.
And in fact, after your interview with Mr. Snyder, which one of them occurred on November 2nd, one of them occurred on November 28th, correct?
I do believe we interviewed Mr. Schneider twice.
And you indicated that after that day of the Snyder interview, you went to try and find the knife. Which day was that?
The
Was
first
it the
one.
second? It
The
was
first
second.
one. The first one. First one.
Did anybody in the neighborhood, in the area which you went to on Adams Drive that you talked about in exhibits 45 through 47, did anybody in that area indicate that they had seen anybody throw a knife in that area?
The night of, no.
Or at any time thereafter?
No. But we did do a neighborhood canvass in that area.
The only place that you came to believe that perhaps the knife had been thrown in that area was from Jack Snyder?
And Tyler De Silva.
So the point he's making is that some of these people were not interviewed until 6 months later. It's just another point he's trying to make. I'm sure he's going to circle back to it at some point, but that's what he was asking. He's saying, okay, you talked to these two people who said the knife might have been over there. They did a canvas. They did a canvas the night of, I believe, as well. We already talked about that. And also, I was going to point something out. The photographs to me prove, okay, maybe an altercation of some kind happened, a fight happened, but I need to see more because it appeared to me from what I saw outside of court that they wanted to fight, that Raul wanted to fight. I can't say Jimmy because he wasn't one of the boys in the car that came over to that party. He was more like, I believe, somebody that was in the crowd and got involved like friends do, like get my back, when other people were being fought. But there was that group chat, and I don't know who was in it. So it's a different witness is going to have to come forward and probably show those text messages, hopefully in day 2. But it was confirmed that the videos from 5 Lazy Brook, which was the garage fight, which was the first fight of the night, and, oh, I'm sorry, there's going to be 2 videos. One is going to be, these are from cell phones, and they're going to be from 5 Lazy Brook, that was the garage fight, and 43 Laurel Glen, which was the front yard. They were given to the police after the defendant was arrested, which was interesting, right? And we haven't seen those yet. And those were provided by a guy named Tanner. He's one of the students.
You described having taken some measurements, and one of those measurements was from the driveway of 43 Laurel Glen Drive to the pathway or walkway of 36 Laurel Glen Drive, correct?
Correct.
And that was about 647 feet, you thought?
That number sounds about right.
It's pretty accurate. You told us about 2 football fields, right? And were any other measurements taken as far as of the yard itself?
On that day, no. But like I said, with the crime mapping system, yes.
I was wondering why the measurements would matter. 2 football fields. I was thinking visually, but then I was thinking maybe timing. Like how far you could throw a knife from a car. I thought about that. I was like, maybe he's showing, had he thrown it out the car, had he tried to get rid of the knife, we would have found it because you can only, because this is the distance. I don't know. We're going to get to it. I'm sure he's building on all of this. You tell me. And it's never been found, I'm assuming. So did it ever exist? And that is maybe where they're going with this. That maybe he picked something up at the scene in self-defense, because I could see them going with that argument. It's compelling, right? In the heat of the moment, he picked something up, a bottle, glass. So it's interesting.
Do you recall any of those measurements?
I don't recall them. No, I didn't memorize them.
For instance, from the driveway where the cars are parked till the end of the yard where the red bush is. Do you have any recollection of what that measurement is?
I do not.
Were you familiar with this neighborhood prior to having gone there to do your investigation?
Somewhat, from working there 25 years, but
Would you agree that this neighborhood is comprised of a series of through roads and then a number of cul-de-sacs that
Yes.
lead off of those roads that go the whole way through?
yes,
And you described it as being dark on this evening, correct?
yes.
Is it also fairly wooded in that area?
Well, not there, what we're looking at, but if you
It
go to
is
the
wooded.
cul-de-sac there, there's some woods. I do believe way on the other end, there's some woods too.
And then there's a river that runs along the backside there just beyond these houses on Laurel Glen.
I was wondering why he would be pointing out the river. Like, I think that would be something the state would point out. Like, oh, there was a river. Couldn't the knife been thrown in there? So I was kind of curious why he was bringing up the river.
There's a river that runs behind the end of Adams Drive.
Is that also behind some of these houses on Laurel Glen Drive? Like, for instance, 36?
I don't know how far that river goes.
This was pretty much the end. So I thought if you have questions of anything, I'll try to answer them. But I'm watching it just like you. We are going through this together. I only know what I said in the last video. But it is interesting to me that they're bringing up things like weather. They're bringing up things like intoxication. They're bringing up things like measurements, the distance between different things. I think that's all going to be very compelling in a situation where they're probably going to have to argue this was chaotic. Lots was going on. It was a small space where it was happening. People were ganging up on him. I don't know yet. I have not watched day 2. I've scrubbed through to try to see the clothing because it made me so upset today not knowing whose clothes were whose. So you're going to find that it's very, very chaotic. There's a lot going on. And it's the normal, what you would think of a teenage scene. Lots of young people, men that are like without their shirts on, trying to, show their ego. It's a lot. It's a lot. Girls screaming, girls trying to get in the middle. And somebody mentioned being a boy mom. I get worried too as a girl mom because there were so many girls there as well. I mean, this was not just a big brawl between bros. This was friends, a party, a fun, what started maybe as like a fun get together, but it turned deadly. And it happened so fast. And there were girls getting in the middle of this fight. It's a lot. But I'm really glad that we're looking at this together. It's one that's not been talked about as much, but I think it should be. And I'm really excited for all of you to go through it with me. I don't think I'm going to be doing like full trial days. I like the recaps because I don't think any of us necessarily have a lot of time to do maybe 2 or 3 different trials at once. But this way, if you are interested in other trials, you can do the recaps and catch up on different ones that are going on right now. This one I'm interested in. The next time I come back, you are going to learn so much more, I promise, because we're going to get into a lot of the more personal accounts of what happened, which I think is going to be a lot different. But you know what? I think we did learn a lot tonight. The scene setup, the police that were on the scene, what was happening. So yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. And I'm really hoping you come back for day 2. But tonight, guess what? We are going on a little date night for the first time in months. So maybe go on my Instagram, see what we're up to. That's where I usually post more personal stuff. I'm also going to gear up to do a private behind the scenes members only live on here. I owe you guys one on the other one if you're a member over there. I have a new video coming out on Patreon. There's a lot of stuff going on. Don't feel like you have to do everything. Pick something if you want. And I'm really excited for all the law baddies. So I love you all. I will see you in my next video. Bye. Have a great night tonight.